Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the GCSP webinars series on global crisis, global risk, and global consequences. My name is Jean Marc Rickli. I'm head of global risk and resilience at the Geneva Center for Security Policy, GCSP. The GCSP is an international non-profit foundation physically based in Geneva, Switzerland, comprised of 52 states, including all the permanent members of the UN Security Council, the so-called P5. The GCSP mission is to promote peace and international security, as well as prepare and transform individuals and organizations so they can create a safer world. We are impartial, independent, and inclusive. We conduct and achieve a mandate through several parallel tracks through executive education, research, public discussion, as well as innovative fellowship program for executive in transition. Our community has grown substantially to 8,200 influential alumni in more than 165 countries in the world. When we started this webinar series 4 weeks ago, the coronavirus was approaching 1 million infections, and there were almost 48,000 people who had passed away of the COVID-19. This week, today, we have more than 2.6 million infections and more than 183,000 deaths worldwide. The topic of today has to do with the impact of the COVID-19 crisis on global terrorism and violent extremist groups. We have a very distinguished panel to talk about this issue today, comprised by Dr. Andrea Stoyan-Karadelli, Associate Fellow at the GCSP and visiting researcher at the University of South Wales. She will speak about the common denominator of both jihadi and far-right extremist groups in managing this crisis. Then we'll have Dr. Christina Shirley-Young, the head of terrorism and prevention of violent extremism at the GCSP. She will talk about far-right extremist movements. Then it will be followed by Mr. Christian Picciolini, a former violent extremist that has since then left the white power movement and has dedicated his life to promoting projects like the Free Radical projects in order to create a network of global extremism prevention and disengagement. He has published 2 books, his memoir called White American Youth, as well as his second book, Breaking Hate, Confronting the New Culture of Extremism. Then Jean-Paul Roulier, the head of the Terrorism Joint Analysis Group, TJAG, at the GCSP, will focus on the way the COVID-19 crisis is being used as propaganda channels by jihadi, far-right, and far-left extremist movements. Jean-Pierre Keller, also from TJAG, Deputy and Senior Analyst at TJAG, will focus on the situation in the camps in northeast of Syria. And finally, Mr. Munir Zamir, counterterrorism and counter-violent extremism consultant and PhD candidate at the University of South Wales, will focus on the jihadi perception of the COVID-19 crisis, as well emphasizing the way they perceive and operate during this crisis. Although the attention of most government are these days drawn by fighting the current COVID-19 crisis, it doesn't mean that traditional threats have disappeared. To the contrary, on April 17, the Department of Homeland Security, the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, issued a nationwide notice saying it is imperative that law enforcement be alert for potential individuals triggered by the pandemic to inflict further harm. The alert noted that while there are currently no imminent or credible threats, there has been an increase in online hate speech intended to incite violence and or use the ongoing situation as an excuse to inflict hate. That's why federal authorities in the US have highlighted grocery stores, gas station, or even COVID-19 testing site as potential target by different terrorist organizations. It was the second warning in a few weeks by these authorities. In terms of global terrorism, both ISIS and Al-Qaeda have provided guidelines for their followers to prevent the spread of the illness, but they also have used that to persuade new people to join their ranks and to promote recruitment. They also have tried to incite hatred, as well as Al-Qaeda has called on people, including those from the Western world, to use their time in self-isolation to convert to Islam. The Islamic State, in its newsletter on March 19, has urged its followers to take advantage of overburdened security capabilities to launch attacks. On March 23, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the most powerful Sunni jihadi groups in Syria, instructed its followers not to let the virus distract them from their fight against Shiites and other non-believers. On April 15, the Maldives was the victim of the first terror attack by ISIS. It destroyed 5 speedboats and 2 dinghies. It was the first time ISIS claimed responsibility for an attack in the Maldives, and the attack coincided with the first cases of community spread of COVID-19 in the country. 2 days ago, one of Europe's most high-profile ISIS terrorists, Abdelmajid Abdelbari, was arrested in Spain. And Spanish security forces said that he and 2 associates used the coronavirus outbreak to sneak into the country and wear surgical masks to disguise their appearances. But this is not just global jihadi groups that are benefiting or trying to use this crisis. Extreme right and left movement are also trying to use that to their benefit. Groups like the Nordic Resistance, 100 Handers, have thought to increase their membership by capitalizing on the pandemic, and Generation Identity has used this crisis to promote European ethno-nationalism. These groups use Telegram as a main way to communicate their messages. As Americans are staying home to stem the spread of the coronavirus, online searches for white supremacist content have increased. In states that have had local stay-at-home orders in place for 10 or more days, there has been a 21% average increase in engagement with violent extremist content. Those responsible for the study mentioned also that nationwide in the US, they found a 13% increase. Far-right groups, so-called accelerationist groups, believes to sow chaos and violence will hasten the collapse of society, allowing them to build a white supremacist world in its place. Last month, the FBI warned that such extremist groups were encouraging members to deliberately spread the virus to Jewish people and police officers. Meanwhile, the International Crisis Group has warned that the pandemic threatens global solidarity in fighting extremists, allowing jihadists and other groups to better prepare spectacular terror attacks.